Nice. So it's Resurrection Sunday. Day Jesus rose from the dead. When the devil thought he had him, he had defeated him. But that's a lie. A lot of what we live today in the world is a lie. It's unfortunate, but it is. You know, just like last week when I shared this event is in all four Gospels like Palm Sunday was, and I just want to take out a couple aspects of each of the Gospel and share them to you in a relevant way, because I think that's important. If we just run around with stories and we don't know how to apply those stories to our life, what good are they? They're just events that happened. You know, like when 9/11 happened. Yes, the event happened, but you know what? It impacted you. Because you remember it, and you know where you were, and you know what you felt after that. And that's what these stories, if we want to put it that way in the Bible, need to do to us. As we read them, we need to, what I try to do is put myself there and say, what would I have done in that situation if I was actually right there watching this occur? You know, as we go through this morning, you know, put yourself there. Let the stories of the Bible impact your life so it brings about change. So you're not just relaying a story, you're relaying a personal experience. Like we would do if it was 9/11. We could relate a personal experience to someone and how it impacted us. So as we go through this morning, like I said, I just want to bring our attention to a few things that I feel are relevant today. And as I started out last week also, it's going to kind of parallel the same way I went last week. But why did Jesus even rise from the dead? And there's many reasons, but the first one is, for me, is to fulfill prophecy. Because it says in Psalm 16, 8 through 10 in the Amplified Bible, I'm just going to read to you verse 10. You can follow along in the notes or on the website, right there on the front page, www.dcc-nh.org. Right there on the front page, you'll see today's sermon notes. You can go there and follow along. But on verse 10 it says, "You will not abandon me to Sheol, the place of the dead. Neither will you suffer your Holy One to see corruption." And then in Isaiah 53:11 in the Living Bible, it says this, "But it was God's good plan to bruise him and fill him with grief. However, when his soul has been made an offering for sin, then he shall have a multitude of children, many heirs. He shall live again, and God's program shall prosper in his hands." You know, it's amazing that God leaves breadcrumbs, so to speak, a path that you can follow, that there's no doubt you can see the hand of God moving in these situations. So like last week when I said it amazed me how they could so misinterpret the event of Jesus riding into Jerusalem, thought he was going to incite an insurrection, so to speak, and take over the world, take over the government, that they couldn't see it clearly. And the same thing happens with this event. They can't really see and comprehend clearly what the event is really about and what it means. Because it says the devil blinds our eyes to things that go on. And the first thing, again, just to kind of follow that same little format I did last week, I found another one of the devil's playbooks in the story of the resurrection. Remember I told you last week how his playbook never changes? Well, I found another event right here in Matthew 28, 11 through 15. This is in the Voice translation. It says, "As the women were making their way to the disciples," and I'm going to pick this point back up, in a few minutes, it says, "Some of the soldiers who had been standing guard by Jesus' tomb recovered themselves." And that's interesting because, as we're going to see here in a second, they were there when the event went down. The soldiers saw it, and now they had to recover themselves. It says, "Went to the city and told the chief priests everything that had happened. The earthquake just after dawn, the heavenly messenger, and his commission to the Marys that were there." So again, they witnessed the entire event. And if you read it in the different Gospels, you know an angel came down and rolled the stone away. There was other two that were in the grave. There was one up in the air speaking to the Marys as they came. They saw all this. And then look at verse 12. It said the chief priests gathered together all the elders for an emergency conference of sorts. They needed a plan. They decided to the simplest course was bribery. They would pay off the guards. Verse 13, and order them to say that the disciples had come in the middle of the night and had stolen Jesus' corpse while they slept. Verse 14, the chief priests promised the soldiers they would run interference with the governor so that the soldiers wouldn't be punished for falling asleep when they were supposed to be keeping watch. Verse 15, and the guards took the bribes and spread the story all around town. And indeed, you can still find people today who will tell you that Jesus did not rise from the dead, that it was a trick, some sort of sleight of hand. And that's interesting. You can still find people today. I'm going to share that a little bit with you in a minute. But know what this reminds me of? It reminds me back a few years ago about a guy named Jeffrey who happened to be in a prison cell. And there was guards watching him. Camera on the cell, but they happened to fall asleep. And guess what? The camera happened to malfunction, or the recording of the camera happened to malfunction. So there was no real record of what happened. Them guys ended up losing their job, but they probably got a bribe to keep their mouth shut. Ain't that interesting how two of them fell asleep at the same time? Now just think about that a minute. If you were there and your buddy was tired, yeah, take a nap. I'll watch. No big deal. Same thing. But the story went out that what? Oh no, committed suicide. No record. Nobody saw it. But the story went out. Because we have to keep the narrative right. Just like last week, there was a shooting in the New York subway system, wasn't there? Description went out of a guy even before anything went out about it. But know what was interesting? I read that there's over like 10,000 cameras in the New York subway system and only 3 were on the blink that day. Guess which ones? Ain't that interesting? What did I tell you last week about those in power will do anything to keep their power? We see that there. Oh no, we can't have this story getting out that Jesus rose from the dead. We got to come up with a plan. So this is what we're going to do. Why do we think things have changed over time? Why do we actually think people in power and authority would not lie to us? Where do we get that from? Don't you understand they are children of the devil, are going to function like the devil? And Jesus said, your father's been a liar from the beginning. So why would we think people wouldn't lie? Christians lie. We don't try to lie, but I bet you lie every now and then. So why do we just blatantly trust everybody else? It happened back here. Oh yeah, just go and say the disciples came and stole them. Can you imagine being one of them guys that get knocked on your behind, shaking and quivering because you just saw this whole thing? You going to be able to keep that a secret? I don't know if they did or not, but that's something huge.
500 eyewitnesses.
Oh yeah, he rose from the dead. It was pretty witnessed by a lot of folk. So catch this now. I want to say a name that you need to really do a little research on. Yuval Noah Harari. You need to look up that name. Y-U-V-A-L. I can't say it. Noah Harari. He's known as the prophet today by Klaus Schwab. If you don't know that name, look that one up too. And others who are pushing the Great Reset for global society. You need to look into this. Because Harari has made some very disturbing statements concerning how we should move forward as a global society. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, because he's actually made this statement that the resurrection of Jesus Christ is fake news. So there's people today still saying, just like we read, oh no, Jesus didn't raise from the dead. In his very words, oh no, that's fake news. This guy is a danger. And know what's interesting? The blatantness of these demonized people to say these things is concerning to me for this reason. Because they say such outrageous, blatant stuff that is so outrageous that the common person is not going to believe it because it's so out of this world, crazy. Do you realize this dude is into hacking human beings? Do you understand he's into surveilling human beings? He actually said the COVID-19 pandemic opened the door for surveillance of every human being on the face of the earth. We saw 9/11 opened up surveillance in general. But now we've allowed people to get used to being surveilled. Used to being looked over. For their own good, of course. Folks, things are unfolding right before our eyes. I'm not saying he's the Antichrist. Remember something, there's always an image in the earth before the event happens. We are seeing what this is going to look like as we walk forward, and if we continue to be silent and we continue to allow this blatantness to occur, it's not going to be cool.
The road's being paved.
Yep.
Road's being paved. It's no joke, and that's my concern. The Christians have become so dull of hearing, so dull of seeing, so dull of any type of common sense. Here, let me just give you a couple verses. Proverbs 3:21 says this, my child, don't lose sight of common sense and discernment. Hang on to them. Don't lose sight of common sense. Common sense says to me, no, the dude in the cell, whose name was Jeff, that was a setup. Okay? Common sense says that. You can't have all these catastrophic events happen. There's no such thing as coincidences. Same with the subway. Oh yeah, just those 3 cameras out of 10,000 happened to be on the blink that day while that event was going down. And what really concerns me is the blatantness of these people that really think that we're that ignorant. That's why I can't watch TV anymore with the news. I would break my TV because of the arrogance and the ignorance of those people. Literally, you forget the person on MSNBC who said, we are the ones that tell you what to believe. No, you can't think for yourself. We will tell you what to believe. Why do they have talking heads come on after there's some kind of speech to tell me what I've just heard? Because they think I'm too stupid to discern what I just heard. This practice has been going on for years and years. And when anyone stands up to declare what actually did happen, no, you're fake news. No, you're conspiracy theory. No, Jesus didn't raise from the dead. Still happening today. They can blatantly tell you what they're going to do. Oh no, when I become president, I'm going to shut down all the oil fields. Oh, he'd never do that. Really? Day one? Are we really that stupid? Sorry, I'm getting a little worked up, but common sense has left the building. And I'm not just talking about out there, in the church. In the church, people want to fight in the church over this stuff. The proverb says, don't lose sight of common sense and discernment. Then he goes on to tell you why in Proverbs 21:16. This in the Living Bible. The man who strays away from common sense will end up dead. You stray away from common sense, you'll end up dead. Common sense tells me I don't need 5 of these. Common sense tells me that's stupid. Because common sense tells me when I grew up I got the measles. Guess what I'm never getting again? the measles. Did I have one of these for them? No, I don't need it. Common sense. If you lack common sense, you will die. Do not lose common sense and discernment. Understand, people do not have your best welfare at heart, they have their own. You know that. You think of yourself usually first before anyone else, don't you? We try not to. That's something we don't want to do. But many times, if somebody asks us to do something on a certain day, what do? I got to check my calendar. I got to see if I'm busy or not. Why? We think about ourselves first. We look at what's going on first. So again, why do we think those folk out there aren't going to do the same thing? Already knowing from what we shared last week and this week, those in power will do anything possible to hold on to their power, even to the point of lying and making up stories and creating an issue to control the masses. Why is that surprising when we say, talk about the last 2 years? 14 days turned into 2 years. Common sense, folk. Are there viruses? Yeah. Is there a flu? Yeah. Is there a cold? Yeah. It's nothing new. But we've allowed it to get turned into something else because we've lacked common sense and discernment. And it's interesting, those that want to walk in common sense and discernment kind of get shot at. So if you're going to walk in that, we're going to get shot at. That's okay. But you need to look up this dude. Seriously. A lot of stuff out there. And if you want to know, you send me a message and I will send you some stuff. This guy wants to hack human beings and take away their own free will. They want to create... You know what I used to watch when I was younger? Star Trek. Remember the Borg? Bingo! Half man, half machine. It ain't a joke. He's talking openly about it. So again, the devil's playbook's always been there. Do not lose common sense and your discernment when you walk through this life and you face things in this life. So now, let's go back and pick up our story, like I said, with the women over in Luke chapter 24, verses 1 through 11. This is in the Passion Translation, says this. Very early that Sunday morning, the women made their way to the tomb, carrying the spices they had prepared. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Joanna, and Jesus' mother Mary. And arriving at the tomb, they discovered the huge stone covering the entrance had been rolled aside. So they went in to look, but the tomb was empty. The body of Jesus was gone. They stood there stunned and perplexed. Suddenly, two men appeared above them in dazzling white robes, shining like lightning. Now remember, them soldiers were there. Terrified, the women fell to the ground on their faces. The men in white said to them, "Why would you look for the living one in a tomb? He is not here, for he is risen. Have you forgotten what he said to you while he was still in Galilee?" Isn't that interesting how we tend to forget what we've heard the Lord say to us? How we allow situations and our feelings or our lack of common sense and discernment get in the way of us remembering what the Lord has said in our lives, or the promises of the Lord. It's interesting that the angels had to rebuke him somewhat. Say, "Did you forget?" How many times do we forget? We ought not to forget. Verse 7, the destiny of the Son of Man is to be handed over to sinful men, to be nailed to the cross, and on the third day rise again. All at once they remembered his words. Leaving the tomb, they went they went to break the news to the 11 and to the others of what they had seen and heard. Okay? So here they are at the tomb, converse with the angels. They're going to go head back to the 11 and tell them what they just were eyewitness to. It said, when the disciples heard the testimony of the women, it made no sense. And they were unable to believe what they had heard. So let's look at that a minute. Let's look at the reaction of the disciples. So when the disciples heard the testimony of the women, now again, eyewitnesses, they were there, they witnessed it, they are repeating everything that they personally experienced to the disciples. The first thing they said was, it made no sense. It made no sense. Now wait a minute, Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection was prophesied. They knew Scripture. Jesus many times alluded to this event would occur, right? That's what the angel said. Didn't you remember him telling you? Yet the actual event happened and it made no sense to the disciples? Really? Honestly, I find this hard to believe, but in reality it happens regularly in the church today. Most commonly this way. Do you know how many times, I'll just talk about me and my personal experience. Know how many times I have prayed for people? Someone will come up to me, just like we heard this morning, can you pray for so-and-so? We'll pray for so-and-so. Someone will call me, text me, whatever, can you pray for so-and-so? I'll pray for so-and-so. And then usually if I don't hear it in a day or two, I text them back or whatever and say, hey, how's so-and-so doing? Oh, they're doing a whole lot better. I'm kind of surprised at that because they were doing really bad. Honestly, that doesn't happen once or twice, hundreds of times. Hundreds of times. I've probably prayed hundreds to thousands of times for people. And that happens. I'm like, it reminds me of these guys. Well, it made no sense. You know why? It doesn't make sense to say, I'll pray for somebody and something actually happens. It doesn't make natural sense. Because why? That's the most person's experience is they have no way to relate to prayer doing anything in their life. That's why when you call a prayer meeting, hardly anyone shows up. Most of the time, no one shows up. You know why? They've got no personal experience behind that doing anything in their life. Because know what they're going to do? They're going to look back at all the other 10, 15, 20, 30 times when they got prayed for, somebody prayed for them, they prayed for themselves and nothing happened. Since when did our personal experience become the judge on what God said will come to pass? Jesus said, on the third day I'm going to rise from the dead. Here comes eyewitnesses to the event coming, telling the disciples, well it said the 11, so the apostles, and it made no sense. We do the same thing. Why? Because we forget what the Word says. The Bible says if you lay hands on the sick, they'll recover. The Bible says the prayer of faith, you anoint him with oil, and the prayer of faith will heal the sick. The Bible says go out and cast out demons in my name. People don't know the difference between a demon, mental illness, or whatever. Why? Because we lack common sense and discernment. Because it's not fashionable today to tell somebody they got a demon. I'm sure it grates people when I say demonized people. There are more demonized people in the world than not demonized people. Because Christians can have a demon. There's certain areas in your life still affected. You got one, get rid of it. It's easy. Just tell it to go. You've been redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. Kick them out. But it's astonishing that still today, we wrestle with this. Why? Because this natural realm has programmed you for spiritual failure. You will never understand spiritual truths through natural means because they make no sense. It makes no sense to look at somebody, tell this thing to go out of them, and all of a sudden they're writhing, they're yelling, they're screaming, and all of a sudden they instantly stop and they're at peace. Makes no sense. But that's what happened with the demon at Gadara, right? He was cutting up himself, tearing up himself, going through, and the next time the people in town saw him, he was there laying on Jesus, fully clothed and sane. Makes no sense. You're right, because this natural realm is going to program you for spiritual failure. See, in 1 Corinthians 2:14 in the Passion, it says someone living on an entirely human level, functioning in their natural human state. Or I put here his own personal level of comprehension and experience, because that's how we live. We live at our own level of comprehension and experience. And anything outside of that, I'm going to get to that in a second, really wigs us out. That's why when somebody says some of the things I said this morning about this Harari guy, they're saying, you're just a nut. No, I'm not a nut. I'm just telling you what he said. But see, it's past your comprehension to understand that. So we immediately react that way when we hear something that's above our comprehension level or our personal experience level. Well, I've never seen prayer work ever, so no, I don't bother to pray. Because you don't have that personal experience. That's what it's saying. Living on an entirely human level, it says this person's going to reject. That word reject means does not have access to the revelations of God's Spirit. You do not have the access to the revelation of the Spirit of God. Did it ever make you wonder why I'm always asking God to bring revelation? I don't choose that word randomly. God, bring revelation today. God, give us revelation. We need revelation in our life. Because people function on a human level. And when you're functioning on a human level, you're going to reject revelation from God if you're not mindful about it. So you need to be mindful. God, give me a revelation of what's going on. I want discernment. I want common sense from you to truly see what's going on in this situation. You're not going to get it unless you're mindful of it. People walk through the day every day and just like a regular human being. And they don't even see the hand of God moving. They don't hear the Spirit of God prompting them to go do something or say something. They just live on an entirely human level. Why? Because they're rejecting. Didn't have to be purposefully. But you reject the revelation of God. Why? It says it right there. For they make no sense to him. He can't understand the revelations because they are only discovered by the illumination of the Spirit. There's two separate ways to function. Function as a spirit being, a function as a natural being. We can do both because we are both. But we've got to understand we are a spirit being living out a temporary human existence here on this earth. That's how I need to be mindful. That's why it says think of the things above, not the things on beneath. Don't be distracted by the stuff going on here. Focus there. And when you focus there, you can deal with the stuff that's here. But you can only do that if you are not functioning as a mere human being. And when you're functioning as a mere human being, that's where you get to fight with people about different revelations, different understanding of the Word of God. No, I don't believe that. No, that ain't true. I was telling Robin this morning, I don't know why, what we were watching, it came up in my mind. I remember being back in the first churches I ever went to, different denomination and stuff, saying to me, well, yeah, that's what the Bible says. When I ask them a question, yeah, that's what the Bible says, but we don't believe that anymore. It's like, how do you do that? It says it right here. Oh, yeah, we know what it says, but we don't believe that. Common sense would tell me, what? You don't know what you're talking about. Why am I listening to you? This is what it says, and you're telling me, no, that's not what it says, or at least we don't believe that anymore. So why do believers struggle so much with belief and faith? Because the next phrase it said, they were unable to believe. So the first thing happened was, it made no sense, and then they went to go on to say further that they were unable to believe what they were saying. Think about this a minute. Will you just don't brush it off? Here are eyewitnesses walking into a situation. They'd be like them walking in here and telling all of us what they just experienced a few minutes ago. Now maybe you might say, well, that doesn't quite make sense. Yeah, it didn't. Although these dudes were around when Lazarus got raised from the dead. It's not like they didn't see someone raised from the dead before. Now, maybe you or me, we haven't experienced that, so if we heard someone raised from the dead, okay, maybe it wouldn't make sense. But now it says they were unable to believe. It went to the next level. Why? Because we have this little system in our brain called the reticular activating system. It's a dangerous little bugger in there. Really is. Let me define it for you. I call it the RAS. The RAS seeks information that validates your belief. Your brain automatically seeks information that validates your belief system. So if you don't believe anyone can raise from the dead, guess what? They're not going to. If you heard that, your brain would automatically say that ain't true. And you'd have a hard time believing. If somebody told you a miraculous thing that they got healed from prayer and you never saw it, your brain is immediately going to go and say, no, that didn't happen. That doesn't make sense because it's not in your personal experience. Because that's what your brain is searching for, a personal experience where you can relate. But then it's going to get to the place where, no, that's not possible. See, it filters the world through the parameters you give it. Or, I put this in, or what you have been programmed with by others. You've listened to others and they've programmed you to believe how this world functions and operates. Those are the parameters you're going to set up when you hear stuff. It says your beliefs are shaped by those parameters. If you think you are bad at giving speeches, you probably will be. If you believe you work efficiently, you most likely do. The RAS helps you to see what you want to see, and in doing so, influences your actions. That's why people see what they want to see. That's why they can see an event, and you can see an event, and you can share it, and they say, oh no, that didn't happen. They're going to see what they want to see. They're going to believe what they want to believe, not understanding you've been programmed that way. See, so anything that goes against your RAS will be immediately rejected, and you will actually have a hard time believing what you see and hear or what others tell you. But notice here in Romans chapter 2, I lost it. Hold on a second. There we go. And the Passion Translation is, and if you're looking at your notes, you see a whole bunch of other things. I just took what other versions also said. Romans 12, verse 2 in the Passion starts out this way. Stop imitating the ideals and opinions of the culture around you. Can you stop looking like everybody else? If you name the name of Christ and He is your Lord, can you stop looking like a son of the devil? So when somebody looks at you, they actually see something that's different. They know something's different. When they meet you, they can tell something's different. Because that's what it says. It says, do not be conformed to this world. Do not become like the people of this world. Don't be like the people of this world. Don't live the way this world lives. Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world. Don't allow the world to mold you into its own image. Don't become so well-adjusted. This is a Message translation. I love this one. Don't become so well-adjusted to your culture that you fit in without even thinking. That's the way most people live. They don't even think. They just go through the day just like everybody else. And the only reason why they know you're a Christian because you're wearing a Christian t-shirt or a Christian hat. They don't know any different. Because you look like them, talk like them, act like them, play like them. Now again, let's not get legalistic over this. But the biggest way people ought to know there's a difference is what comes out of your mouth. What you focus on. Like we heard this morning, get to share the gospel with somebody. Yeah, you listen to what they have to say. Now, let me explain this to you. And you share. There's a difference. People out there usually ain't sharing the gospel with you. It's our job to share it with them. So we don't live like they do. It goes on to say, but be inwardly transformed. That word transformed, when you look it up in the Strong, says this, to change into another form. You ought to change into another form. To transform, to transfigure. When Jesus was on the Mount of Transfiguration, He looked completely different than before He transformed and after He transfigured. Completely different when they saw Him. We ought to look completely different. You know why? How? Like with your eyes open and a smile on your face, they'll say, what is wrong with you? How can you be smiling in this world? I got the joy of the Lord. I mean, that's an easy one. When they look at you, I'm not talking about so much the outward appearance, but what is on the inside radiates out. Have you ever heard this phrase? I know you have. When a woman gets pregnant, does she have to tell people that she's pregnant usually? All you other ladies are good at this. You look at them and go, you make that face. You're glowing. I see you glowing. You don't see anything yet. But the glowing, what's on the inside is actually radiating out on the outside, and you can tell. It's the same being a believer. We ought to radiate on the outside. What's on the inside? That's how we don't live like people around here. In this world, I mean. Because we're actually living out of our spirit being. Where we have changed form. How? It says by the Holy Spirit. Through a total reformation of how you think. And then again, I got a whole bunch of other verses here, the way it says it, by the renewing of your mind. Let God change the way you think. By a new way of thinking. By a complete change of mind. Let God remold your minds within you. Let God remold your mind. Because this world has molded it in the way it thinks you ought to behave and what you ought to be and how you ought to function and do. Let God remold it. And be a new and different person with a fresh newness in all you do and think. Let your way of thinking be completely changed. I like this last one especially. By the renewing of your soul. Don't just renew your mind, renew your emotions. Don't be getting all angry and up in people's faces when you don't like what's going on. Renew your mind. You got to think different. Renew your heart. Renew your emotions. Don't react like the world reacts. And you will. Let this Holy Spirit completely renovate your soul, man. Because your soul has been trained since birth to function from the outside in. Let God transform you from the inside out. Is what this is saying. Then it goes on and says, this will empower you to discern God's will as you live a beautiful life, satisfying and perfect in His eyes. But let's wrap it up with this. So that's how the disciples reacted. Makes no sense. We can't believe what you're telling us. How'd Jesus react? Let's over in Mark 16, 9 through 14. We'll wrap it up here. It says, after Jesus rose from the dead early on Sunday morning, the first person who saw him was Mary Magdalene, the woman in whom he had cast out 7 demons. She went to the disciples who were grieving and weeping. Okay, get the situation. So when she walked in, they're grieving and upset. He's dead. Ain't coming back. Apparently they forgot what he told them. Because they're grieving and weeping. And she had told them what had happened. Now, do you think she went in somberly or jumping up and down, yelling and screaming? I bet she was pretty excited and sharing the news. But when she told them that Jesus was alive and she had seen him, they didn't believe her. Verse 12, afterwards, he appeared in a different form to 2 of his followers who were walking from Jerusalem into the country. As another gospel writer puts it, you know, he meets them on the road to Emmaus, right? This is what he's talking about here. In verse 13, they rushed back to tell the others. So not only the women showed up, now 2 of the disciples saw him, talked with him. They run back to tell everyone else. It says, but no one believed them. So now you get 2 sets of eyewitnesses coming and they wouldn't believe. So no more that it didn't make sense. Now they're just flat out not believing. Now look at verse 14. It says this. Still later, he appeared to the 11, the he being Jesus. And as they were eating together, look at what he did. It says he rebuked them. He rebuked them. Here they are weeping and crying, all upset. Jesus is dead. One they spent 3 years with, tooling around, doing all this stuff, is gone. Their leader is gone. Now, if you've ever suffered a loss, that's emotional. It's heartbreaking. It's hard. But what did Jesus do when he showed up? Rebuked them. Other versions put it this way. He spoke firmly to them. He told them off. Is another translation. Took them to task most severely. He spoke to them with sharp words. He reprimanded them. He criticized them. He didn't take this too lightly. We're going to get into why in a minute. But this is how Jesus responded to these poor disciples who have just suffered a loss. He rebuked them. So that'd be like me coming in to a funeral wake session after you just suffered a loss and me taking you to task. Of you whining and moaning and crying. Well, that ain't too compassionate. That ain't too loving. It's what he did. There's a reason behind it. Because then the verse goes on to say, he rebuked them for their stubborn unbelief. Another version puts it this way, their stubborn refusal and hardness of heart for their lack of faith, because they refused to believe those who had seen him after he had risen from the dead. This phrase, their stubborn belief, Jesus didn't take kindly to their stubborn unbelief and refusal to believe those who testified to his resurrection. He didn't seem to care about their emotional state of well-being as they were distressed from his death. Jesus saw their stubbornness and refusal to believe as a greater threat and danger to the apostles than hurting their feelings with his rebuke. Why? Because stubbornness and outright refusal to believe leads to a seared and hardened heart. A heart that can no longer be led by or guided by the Holy Spirit. This would ultimately lead to a heart that will apostate in the last days. Hebrews 3:12 says this in the Expanded Bible. So brothers and sisters, be careful. See to it that none of you have an evil, unbelieving heart that will turn you away from, desert, forsake the living God. Because that's what stubborn refusal to believe will do. A lot of people are stubbornly unbelieving in a lot of areas of their life. And what it's going to do is harden your heart. It's going to sear your conscience. And in the end, when the great delusion comes and the doctrine of demons come, guess what? People are going to jump right in. Why? Because you can no longer hear or be led by the Holy Spirit of God because of your stubborn unbelief. I've seen it in people. When I've said something to them, I've seen the stubbornness just rise right up. I don't believe that. I don't care what you say. I'm going to believe this till the day I die. Wow, that day's coming quick. Because those that don't have any common sense, you're going to die. Going to lead you to death. That path you're on is going to lead you to death. I don't care what you have to say. Well, in a sense, that's good because I don't care what... It's not about me and what I say. It's about what's God saying. What's he saying? So what's our takeaway here? As we celebrate this day we call Resurrection Sunday, let me ask you this. If you were one of the disciples on that day, would you have believed the eyewitness testimony that he has risen? Think about it. If you were actually there that day, would you have believed it? I mean, you were probably there and saw him die on a tree. You witnessed his beating. You witnessed all this stuff. You witnessed the brutality of it. It's not like any of the pictures that we see on Facebook yesterday and today. Nothing like that on Friday. You saw all that with your own eyes, and then 3 days later, someone comes running in all excited saying he's alive. What would be your reaction? Now, before you answer, let me remind you of a question I asked you last week. Jesus said, "Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do what I've asked you to do?" Because our behavior speaks and indicates our belief system. When was the last time you examined your heart to ensure that it wasn't heading in the direction of being evil and unbelieving? Because that's what he's addressing here at the resurrection. An evil and wicked and unbelieving, a stubborn heart, hard-heartedness. When was the last time you examined your own heart and said, "Lord, is my heart getting hardened?" And I don't care, in a certain area. People harden their hearts in all kinds of areas. Just pick a doctrine. In giving. Hardened heart. I'm going to refuse to believe what the scriptures say. Healing. I'm going to refuse to believe. Casting out demons. I'm going to refuse to believe what the scriptures have to say. Speaking in tongues. I'm going to refuse to believe. That's a hardened heart. When was the last time you checked? See, because Proverbs 4:23 in the Passion Translation says this, "So above all, guard the affections of your heart." Now again, the Passion expands it to say this, and this is really key right here. It includes your thoughts, your will, your discernment, and your affections. Because if you don't guard your heart, your affections are going to be affected, your discernment's going to be affected, your will's going to be affected, and your thoughts are going to be affected. For these affect all that you are. Pay attention to the welfare of your innermost being, for from there flows the well springs of life. Your being is determined by your heart, your thoughts. That's why I said you got to renew your mind. You have to do that. You don't be asking other people for their view and opinion. You sit down, open that book, you read it, and ask God to reveal to you what He wants you to know in that book. I'm amazed how many people can cite so many things, sports statistics, songs, all kinds of things. But when it comes to the Word of God, they're so dense. I say that lovingly. They're so dense. Spend more time in the world intaking worldly junk, wondering why they struggle with spiritual matters, wonder why I don't see things working in the spiritual realm like they ought to. You know what God gave me? You might have saw me put it up on Facebook. Something Glee has been saying for a while, but it really hit me for some reason on Friday. Brackish water. You know what that is? You're mixing all kinds of stuff together, and it's not even the original anymore. The power of God in people's lives are so combined with all this other worldly junk, and they wonder why the power of God's not manifesting in their life. Because the power of God's about that much of your life, and everything else is this much of your life, and you're wondering, you're thinking this little thing is going to overcome that. Where's your common sense? You spend more time with this, indulged in this, believing in this, talking this, sowing this into this world, and when you go to plant that, it does nothing. It's brackish water. We need to get back to the pure Word of God, the holiness of God, where God is all in all and there is none other. There is nobody higher than He is. There is nobody more important than He is. There is nothing more important than He is. And when we finally put Him back at the place He belongs, everything else will start working properly in our life. And that water will start getting cleaned up. It's almost like those pictures too where you see salt water and fresh water meeting. There's a line. I think He said to one of the churches, "You ain't either hot or cold. I'm going to spew you out." And because we're in that condition, we wonder, why aren't I seeing prayer answered? Why aren't I seeing things change in my life? Why am I just in so many difficulties with so many different things? Because again, there's that law of sowing and reaping. You are spending all your time in that harvest field. And you ain't over in this harvest field. You put that much time into it, an hour and a half on Sunday morning. And all the rest of the week is over in this harvest field, and you're reaping really good over there. And some of it you ain't liking what you're reaping, and you're going to come over here and you want to get this much and think that's going to overpower it. We're going to take personal responsibility for our own relationship. We've been programmed in this world that everybody else is supposed to fix it for us. Doesn't work that way. I told you last week, a spirit-filled, born-again, tongue-talking believer, I'll put it that way, is the most dangerous human being on the face of the earth. You are the answer to this world's ills. And he proved it on this day when he rose from the dead and says, now you go because I have all authority. Now you go in my name and use that authority to change this world. Nobody in that golden dome down the road is going to fix this world. No one in that White House is going to fix this world. No one's going to fix this world. I'm looking at you. And there, if you'll do what he said, you examine your heart. You keep it from getting hard. You apply the Word. You walk in the Word and the authority and power of His name. You start telling sickness and disease to go. You start declaring what you want to see. And guess what? Don't grow weary in well-doing, because your harvest field over here is only this big. Because you ain't been working it. You got to work it and keep working it and keep working it. What you got to do is get out of that harvest field and get over into the one that God created you to be in. He says, I've given you dominion over the earth. Not the devil's kids, my kids. Now what you try to do is bring the devil's kids into the fold. And if they don't want in, you certainly don't submit to them. Bow the knee to them. Or listen to them. Because they do nothing but steal, kill, and destroy. And lie through their teeth. Great Easter message, right? But I told you, I'm just trying to be practical. The end is coming. As we heard, the road's getting paved. And my people perish for lack of knowledge. I don't ever want to stand before the Lord and say, why didn't you tell them? But Lord, it was Easter. We're supposed to be flowery and lovey and, get out all the bunny ears and all the eggs and all that stuff. It's just supposed to be a celebration day. Oh, really? What did I do when I rose from the dead? I kicked the boys' butts because of their unbelief. Because you don't understand the danger that you walk in if you believe the wrong thing, because it will kill you. And he's trying to get that message to us. Look, you are the answer. You have the mind of Christ. You know all things through Christ. And you're sitting there saying, yeah, but I just told you the but. You've been in the wrong harvest field for way too long. You've got to bury that thing, cover it with the blood of Jesus so you don't receive no more of that, and start walking and plowing in your spiritual field. Knowing who you are, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, walk in the power and authority of the name of Jesus, and do it until He comes, or you go home. That's the only way it's going to work from this place forward. So let's pray. Father, thank you for your word, truth of your word. And Lord, please bring revelation. Because Because there's so much brackish water now, Lord, it's... And again, it's not a legalistic thing, but Father, we saw what happened to them boys that offered strange fire at your altar. You killed them. Lord, you don't play. I don't know how we've gotten this mentality that we can just kind of live and act the way we want, and you're all good with that. Are you loving and you're merciful? Absolutely. Are you long-suffering? With some of us, way too long-suffering. And I thank you that you're long-suffering and you're merciful and gracious because it gives us opportunity to turn around. But if our heart gets to the place where it's hardened and we get stubborn, we ain't turning around. We're going to walk away and we're going to apostate, Lord. And I've seen too many people, too many friends, too many close friends walk away for whatever reasons. But Lord, that wasn't of you. It's because they didn't guard their heart and they allowed an offense to come in and they allowed the devil to manipulate that offense to the place where they just walked away. Because it made no sense to them anymore, and they're going to refuse to believe. Father, may that never happen here in this place, those that watch this. But Lord, once again, stir up your spirit that's within us, that we know, that we know, that we know you are our God, and that you are not a man that you should lie. And we do have the common sense and discernment and wisdom to walk in this world, that we truly are the answer to this world. And man, I know that grates some of you because I can feel it. Because you've been told you're the problem. You've been told you're no good. You've been told you're going to amount to nothing. That's why you need to transform your mind. That's what man has told you. Jesus said you're the answer. That's why I've given you my name and my authority and told you to go, because you're the answer to this lost and dying world. So Lord, truly give us that revelation we need to know that we are truly worth the price that you paid to redeem us. We can truly walk in authority that you've given us through the name of Jesus and do it in humility. And Lord, that we are somebody's answer, even this day. Lord, we love you and praise you and worship you, honor you. There is no other God but you. And as we go from this place, we go blessed, challenged. Give us a great rest of the day, family, friends, or whatever we have planned to do today. But Lord, may we not forget what this day is truly about. And we honor you now in the name of Yeshua. Amen and amen. Be blessed.